And good evening and welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. My guest this evening is Bob Mortali. Bob, welcome. How are you?
Pete, great to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you. Good. It's been a while.
Well, you visited our radio station not too long ago, this is the reciprocal side of it.
There you go. So tell us a little bit about Bob Mortali and how long you've been in the broadcast industry.
Oh, it goes way back to the late 70s, my days at Syracuse University. I used to do the play-by-play of the Syracuse football and basketball teams while I was a student. I actually got to cover the Lake Placid Winter Olympics as a student. So I was at the big hockey games in 1980.
Wow.
The Miracle on Ice game, I was there covering it as a reporter. So technically I was there for free. Since graduation, worked at a lot of media outlets, mostly in the Northeast of U.S., mostly in Connecticut. I used to be on a Channel 26 TV in New London in the early 90s as a nightly sportscaster. More recently, I was on WQUN in Hamden, station that was unfortunately taken off the air not too long ago, but got to do play-by-play for Quinnipiac basketball, as well as being the midday news anchor, daily sportscaster. And nowadays I'm also at Fox Headline News 24/7 down in New York City, where I'm the weekend sports anchor. I was there yesterday from 3 to 10, and that can be heard on Sirius XM satellite channel 115 for those of you who have satellite on your car radio, and that's how you can pick us up on your drive around the area.
Wow. Oh my God, you're a busy man.
I try to be.
You're almost as busy as Pete Mezzetti.
No, that's the standard I can't reach.
Oh, come on, Bob. now tell us. Let's talk a little bit. We're going to talk sports tonight and all broadcasting. But let's start with. I saw in the papers this morning that UConn wants to go back to the Big East.
Yes, I did see that over the weekend, and it's almost a done deal. When a lot of people start saying no comment when their approach, is it true that this is going to happen? I'll say no comment.
Right.
That means it's going to happen probably in the next couple of days.
Probably.
And now fans should be kind of careful about this. This is not going to be the Big East as we remember from the Georgetown, Syracuse, UConn, Boston College days. It's a different Big East now. You have the 7 Catholic schools that took over the conference as what it is now, so it's basically made up of Georgetown, St. John, Seton Hall, Providence, Villanova, as well as some other schools that kind of make up the difference, like Creighton and Xavier. So it's not going to be the Big East as we remember it. It'll be a different version of the Big East, and they'll be able to renew some of the rivalries with the Red Storm and with the Hoyas and with Providence. To pick that rivalry up again would be nice, but there won't be any Boston College, there won't be any Syracuse, Louisville, Notre Dame. They're all in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Right.
But it will help out a lot in terms of travel, logistics, maybe kindle a few memories from the 80s and the 90s when they were doing quite well in the old Big East. But again, it'll be a different kind of Big East. People should be wary of that.
Exactly. Now, the old Big East was what teams?
Okay, from the Georgetown, Syracuse, St. John's, Seton Hall, Villanova, Pitt, Boston College, those are the classic teams of the Big East. And then eventually you're adding DePaul and Marquette as time went on. So it got to be a little bit of a Big East on steroids kind of thing.
There you go.
But then again, people were leaving. Boston College left kind of early to be in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And of course, having a team in the Boston area playing mostly against the Carolinas, Georgia, and schools in that part of the country. Geographically, that was a harbinger of things to come, because now you have a team like Notre Dame in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and of course, if you know, South Bend, Indiana is nowhere near the Atlantic Coast geographically.
That's right.
But it's a powerful conference now, and the money that could be made if you're a power conference between TV rights and all that sort of thing, plus it's the opportunity for your football programs. So there's no more Big East football.
That's right.
There was Big East football in the 90s. Miami was in the conference at that time. Now they're in the ACC. If UConn goes into the Big East, it'll be for basketball and a lot of other lesser sports. It won't be for football. So the football thing is still kind of an out there issue that has to be resolved down the road.
Okay. Now, as far as your broadcast career, when you were with Quinnipiac, you covered women's basketball.
Actually, for the last 10 years, I've been the basketball announcer for both teams.
The men and the women.
The first 8 years, I was splitting my time between the two. It was basically, Bill Schweitzer was our original executive producer, and he hired me.
Yes.
He would always decide, okay, I'm going to do these 70 or so games out of the 105 that we did every year, combining hockey, men's hoop, and women's hoop. He would give me games for basketball when he had conflicts, or I had to travel somewhere. He couldn't go for whatever reason.
Right.
So that happened for much of the first 8 years. In the last 2 years, I became the sole voice of the women's team. And as we talked about off the air, the women's team has been tremendous in recent years.
Yeah.
3 straight MAC conference tournaments, 4 in the last 5 years. Won a couple NCAA tournament games in recent years. Got to the Sweet 16 in 2017.
That's right.
And I've done games in 21 states plus DC, and been able to do a few bucket things off of my list. So I've had a blast the last couple of years.
You have a favorite game or favorite memory?
Favorite memory, without question, was in Miami 2017 when they beat Marquette and Miami in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament to move to the Sweet 16. Bill Schweitzer had a hockey game to do in Lake Placid, New York, in the ECAC semifinals, which allowed me the opportunity to cover the women's basketball team in its place.
So you went to Miami?
I went to Miami. Coral Gables actually is where the University of Miami is located.
Okay, sure.
The hotel was tremendous. The weather was outstanding. The teams made history twice. The feedback from everybody was so positive. It was just a wonderful experience to be down there for that whole weekend. I mean, it's March and we're in the pool,
exactly,
lounging side by side. People were texting me after the game, which doesn't happen. I don't get very many texts as a regular basis, but that's the first time people reaching out to me. And then a couple of days later, we got back. They're getting ready to go play South Carolina in Stockton, California, a game they eventually lost.
Okay.
But there was a rally at the Quinnipiac Arena where they brought this huge hook and ladder fire truck outside the arena to kind of like symbolize their rise up the ranks of the college basketball powers in the country. And when I attended this rally to do some interviews before the team left, so many people came up to us and told me, "You guys were great the other night." What happened was, in the Miami game, the ESPN telecast, the video went down in the first half.
Oh, no.
For much of the second quarter, so people lost touch with the TV broadcast. Then they realized, hey, wait a minute, this game's on radio too.
Yeah.
So we brought a whole new audience and put the radios on and discovered us. These are the new audience that found us and they go, these guys are good.
Yeah.
And another compliment we've gotten through the years is that people say to us, we like listening to you guys. You actually talk about Quinnipiac, where the tendency is the TV announcers on a national basis will focus more on the big name opponent, the Miamis, the Marquettes, if it's UConn, that sort of thing. It's like Quinnipiac is lucky to be here in that in their parlance to a degree. Then when Quinnipiac starts stealing a couple of victories on the national scale, they make quite an impression. And we talked about this before. Two nice things from that tournament run in 17. Gino Auriemma a few days later went to a press conference, opened up his shirt,
had a Quinnipiac
t-shirt on.
That's right, I remember
that. Was terrific. And the night that Quinnipiac beat Miami, Rebecca Lobo's on ESPN teaching the proper pronunciation of Quinnipiac.
Yes.
Too many people say Quinnipiac, and that's incorrect.
Yes. You know how to say it, I know how to say it, so we're good.
They used to pay me to say it. I'm going to show you one other benefit of my experience with Quinnipiac. When pro teams win a championship, there are billionaire owners who buy World Series rings and Super Bowl rings for everybody on his employee staff, not just the players and the coaches. It doesn't happen very often in college sports, but Trish Fabry was nice enough to give me this.
You have the ring.
This is from the MAC Conference victory in 2018, and it's like a mini Super Bowl ring.
Right.
My name is engraved in it. There are a lot of, I don't know if it's diamonds or cubic zirconia, but I don't care. It is just the fact that they thought enough of me to give me one of these. I'm going to get a second ring very soon for the conference title they won 3 months ago, and I'm looking forward to that. And that is such a nice perk that
it is.
It doesn't happen in all college sports teams. Depends on the school, depends on their budget, and depends on if you want to set a precedent to give more than just players and coaches rings. So they were nice enough to include me and my partner Diane Nolan in the ring list the last 2 years.
Wow. Now, who is Diane Nolan, and what is she like as a broadcaster?
Diane Nolan is the former women's basketball coach at Fairfield University. She coached there for about 28 years. One of her players was a strapping 6'2" forward named Trish Sacca, who married her and became Trish Fabry. So she coached Trish when Trish was a player at Fairfield. Then Trish became an assistant coach under Diane after her playing days and eventually got hired at Quinnipiac almost 25 years ago. Diane Nolan is the winningest women's coach in Fairfield history. She's won 5 MAC Conference Coach of the Year awards and 3 conference titles in the MAC in the 90s, and took 1 at-large team to the NCAA tournament. In other words, they didn't win the conference that year, but they were good enough to be invited anyway to fill out the 64-team field. She's worked with me the last 2 years, and she's a superhuman being. When you get to know her off the air, she's friendly, she's upbeat, she's eager to learn the broadcast side of things, to know that, okay, if you're going to say something, you've got to wrap up what you want to say when the play goes back into action, because again, people can't see a radio broadcast.
Right.
So you got to get in, say what you want to say, get out quick, and not jump on the play-by-play announcer's duties to paint the visual picture for those who can't see it. And I've enjoyed working with her a lot, and hopefully things can work out and we can work together again.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Great career so far, Bob.
It's been varied. I've done TV, I've done radio, I've done some internet things, and hopefully there's still more down the road.
Definitely. Now, as far as, let's talk about college sports.
Okay.
To this day, and have they changed in the years when you first started broadcasting to what they are now?
In what way? There are so many changes in college sports from, say, late 70s, 1980, whatever. I mean, just the sheer explosion of television coverage of college sports, and not just the big sports. If you can look nowadays, a lot of conferences are organizing video events for lacrosse, soccer, volleyball, swimming. We made the mistake when I was a student at Syracuse to call those sports minor sports because they weren't football and basketball. So the minor sports coaches got a little offended. So we started referring to them as non-revenue producing sports. Nowadays you could probably produce some revenue given how good your soccer team may be, your lacrosse team, your hockey team, and not every school's got a hockey program.
Right.
So just the sheer multitude of opportunities to follow a team, either through regular television, through video streaming on the internet, and of course social media. That goes without saying. I mean, you can get updates about stuff through somebody's tweet within seconds of it happening. Now, you have to be leery about that sometimes.
Yeah.
You get it quick, great, but is it accurate? And sometimes people jump the gun because, oh, I made a mistake. I meant to say that, but the damage is done at that point.
Definitely. Would you want to stick around?
Absolutely.
We'll be right back.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. Sitting here with Bob Mortali. Bob, welcome back.
Thank you.
So, Bob, we were talking in the first segment where you actually covered the Olympics. Tell us about it.
Okay, I've been to 2 Olympic Games as a journalist. I mentioned 1980 before, Miracle on Ice game. Again, I'm a student at Syracuse University. It's my senior year, 3 months from graduation, and Lake Placid's about a 3-hour drive from Syracuse. So our college radio station, WAER, the station that brought you the legendary guys like Bob Costas and Marv Albert and announcers of that caliber, we were covering football and basketball like we always do, but then this kind of fell in our laps. The USOC, United States Olympic Committee, authorized 7 of us, all seniors, to be able to cover the Olympics on the stipulation that only 3 of us could be there in any one day, and you had to designate who was the announcer and who was the technician of the 3. And so you can only have 1 announcer and 2 technicians on any one day. Although once you're there, the technicians are really going to be reporters and cover events.
Exactly.
So, but those are the guidelines. Fine. It's much more difficult to get a credential to an Olympics nowadays, given the worldwide security issues. In any event, it turns out my 3 days to be there were the last 3 days, and the first of those 3 was February 22nd, 1980, and I found myself 4:30 that afternoon, about 30 feet to the left of Al Michaels in the press box when we played the Soviet Union.
Wow.
And again, I'm 21 years old at the time, and this is the middle of the Cold War. I was chanting USA like everybody else.
Of course.
And when we won that night, it was insane. As you might imagine, you've probably seen the clips. The next day, all the players were invited to a press conference for the first time. Herb Brooks, the coach, would not allow them to be interviewed. after games because he didn't want a star system to develop.
Okay.
So the media said, bring all 20. So he did. And after that press conference, I was just coming back from covering ski jumping when the players were coming out, and ABC television is waiting to do one-on-ones with these players so we can hear what they sound like for the first time. So I happened to observe, I want to see, okay, how does the network do this? And back then you'd have a guy answering questions, and you got a supervisor, and you got a camera guy, and you got someone to sit and make sure that the press pass is adjusted properly, and, kind of a makeup kind of individual.
Exactly.
And so while I'm there, I bump into some people, and before you know it, I've got Mike Ruzzione's autograph on my game ticket. Buzz Schneider, Dave Christian, all signed my game ticket. It's now in a glass frame in my house with the Sports Illustrated cover the following week. It's just no words. It's just American flags waving after they clinched the victory. 2 days later, I'm there when we won the gold medal against Finland. Kind of a corner of the ice photo deck, top side of the bleachers, and the guy was sitting next to actually smuggled some wine into the arena when he didn't search for that stuff back then.
No, of course not.
Airline bottle, basically.
Yeah.
He offered me one, and cool, And we toasted the American victory that day. I also had the pleasure of covering the Sydney Olympics in 2000 for ABC Radio, one of my past outlets in New York City. They asked me to be one of 3 anchors for the nationwide coverage of the Sydney Olympics. So I spent almost a month in Sydney in September 2000. Now, the funny part about that was, because of the time difference, it's 15 hours tomorrow in Sydney. So if it's 6 o'clock U.S. Coast time here, it's 9 o'clock tomorrow in Australia.
Yes.
So because of the time difference, they want to be on noon to 6 East Coast U.S. time. The corresponding hours in Australia are 1 a.m. to 9 a.m. I did 17 straight all-nighters doing Olympic news in the middle of the night. And then once my replacement came in, okay, what event are we going to go see today?
Yeah, right.
So I got to see a couple track and field events. I got to see some swimming preliminaries, volleyball, women's basketball against the Soviet Union. Now it was Russia.
Yeah.
And one of the fun things we did, you're familiar with the Sydney Harbor Bridge?
No.
Okay. If you ever watch New Year's Eve coverage, in the first video they show you of the fireworks in Australia, there's a semicircular bridge that goes like this over Sydney Harbor. Okay. That's called the Sydney Harbor Bridge, built in the early 30s. They sell tours, you can walk across the top of it like a mountain climber. And so we did that.
Really?
And so what they do is they kind of gown you up. They give you black nylon sweatpants, kind of a gray pullover top. The key is if you mesh with the metal as you're climbing, the metal of the bridge, drivers don't look up and go, oh my God, it's a jumper, and it causes an accident.
Yeah, right.
So you're able to blend in. They strap a belt on you with a kind of a pulley system in which you slide your belt loop into this metal rod, and then that's what keeps you walking up the distance so you don't slip and fall. So, and nothing falls on the cars either.
Right.
And you're with a guide, and he tells you what to do and how to do it, and before you know it, you're several hundred feet over the harbor with views that are outstanding.
Exactly.
Now they sell tours of that for, at the time, it was $150 Australian, about 82 American, given the exchange rate, but we as reporters got to experience it for free, and then we could discuss on the radio what it was like. So that was fun, and the Australian people were so super nice and friendly and helping. I was going to the bridge climb that day, and I'm going to the downtown Sydney subway, or subway station. Yep. And I'm kind of looking around for Cumberland Street, looking for a sign, and a volunteer with a clipboard in her hand goes, hello, love, can I help you? You look lost. I said, I'm looking for Cumberland Street. Oh, Cumberland Street, no problem. You take my map, you go up those stairs, turn right, and they're looking for people who look befuddled as part of their efforts to make the experience more positive. And it was probably the best professional experience I've ever had as a broadcaster. So I tell people the Lake Placid Olympics were my single favorite moment of all time, because that was voted in Sports Illustrated the top sports event of the 20th century. But as a professional, the Sydney Olympics topped the bar there with the 2017 NCAAs for Quinnipiac women, a very close second.
Exactly. Now, obviously, you're a sports fan as well. You have a favorite team?
Depends on what sport we're talking about. I'm a Yankee.
Baseball.
Yankees, Giants in football. I hate to say the Knicks, but because they've had their problems in the 21st century, but I'm still a Knicks fan. I'm a Rangers fan in hockey. My two favorite college teams are Notre Dame and Syracuse.
Obviously. Now, how the whole ordeal with Jim Boeheim back during basketball season?
Yes, unfortunately, he was involved in an accident in which a driver in another vehicle was killed.
Yeah.
The driver of that vehicle had an issue, got out of his car. It was a cold night, dark. Some of the roads were icy. Jim Boeheim never really saw that person and couldn't stop in time.
Right.
And he was cleared of any legal wrongdoing, and the whole university campus was broken up about it, and they tried to do the right thing.
Right.
In terms of the next game, there was a tribute to the individual who died that night. There were no legal charges. They debated whether or not he should coach the team 3 days after the accident happened. Yeah. And obviously, there are more important things in life than a basketball game.
Yeah.
But he was encouraged to go out and do it because the team would want him there, and the fans gave him a glowing tribute, a huge standing ovation to say, we're on your side, we support you. It was just one of those unforeseen things, and really not much anyone could do about that incident that was disappointment across the board.
He seems like a very I've never met him, but he seems like a very classy guy. But just by watching on TV and seeing watching a basketball game.
Well, he for years, after he had a battle with prostate cancer several years ago, started raising money for cancer research. Him and his wife Julie hold these fundraising events in Syracuse every year, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. And because he's got pulled, he can get big name other people to come attend these events. Other coaches he's competed against, his former players, some have gone on to the NBA, to come out and help the benefits that he's put together as a cancer survivor, and also it helps foster a strong community bond out there. He's a lifelong Central New Yorker. He's born in Lyons, New York. Played at Syracuse in the early to mid '60s. He's been the head coach since my freshman year. We're talking 1976. So he's the only Syracuse coach I've known ever since I was a student.
Wow. And he's still there too.
He'll start his 44th season in November.
Oh my God.
He's in the Hall of Fame on the national championship in 2003 when Carmelo Anthony was a freshman, and there's no slowing down. And now his son is on the team, so he'll be there for at least 3 more years.
Oh, his son's on the team?
In fact, he's got one son that plays for Cornell, Jim Jr., and his other son, Buddy Boeheim, was a freshman this past season.
Wow. Talk about basketball running in the family.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. Holy cow. And obviously, they should. How do you think Syracuse is going to look this season for basketball?
It's too early to tell. Yeah. I mean, they're never out of it. They're good for 18 to 20 wins, but ever since they joined the Atlantic Coast Conference, it has not been as easy, or let's say the success level has not been there compared to their Big East days. I mean, they'll lose 11 to 12 games a year because the ACC is so bloody competitive. You got to play North Carolina twice, Duke twice, NC State twice. There are no real pushovers in the ACC anymore.
No.
Florida State's very good, and Miami has shown signs of life in recent years. Notre Dame is always a tough physical battle. Yeah. So a typical 19 and 12 year could be an average year for Syracuse in the ACC, where maybe 24 and 7 in the Big East days would get it done. And so it's too early to tell for this year's team, but they're always going to be in the mix.
Yeah. Now, as far as your broadcast career goes, what type of guy is Bill Mecca like?
Bill Mecca, I've had a chance to work with him on a couple of broadcasts. In fact, he was one of my color commentators along with a guy named Bob Tipson when we covered the NCAAs in Miami two years ago.
Okay.
Now, he was a former coach at Quinnipiac. I knew him as an assistant in the 80s. He became the head coach for about 5 years in the early 90s. Now he's the number 2 man in the athletic department.
Okay.
When Bill Schweitzer first approached him about being on the radio broadcast, he was a little reluctant to do so. He had no experience. He said, "No, you don't need experience. Just you're here for your expertise." Now Schweitzer tells the story. Now you can't shut him up because you get him wound up, but in a good way. I mean, he's a card. He's a pistol. He'll say funny things to break us up back in the studio. He's a great guy to work with, and he tells some funny stories, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Bill Schweitzer seems like a really nice guy. I've had Bill's been down to the studio before with me, and he's very, very genuine. Bill
was very good at what he did for all those years. He was nice enough to bring me on as one of his backup announcers. And I tell people the one thing I'll always be grateful to Bill Schweitzer is that when I first approached him about the opening, he didn't look for reasons not to hire me. There have been some outlets in the state that I've applied to, TV, other college play-by-play, and they said, "Okay, fine, thanks. We'll let you know," and then go hire somebody else. And it's almost like, and they prolonged the process because they really didn't want me. So, but Bill was great. He knew of me in the past. We had some interaction in the 80s and 90s. So when it opened up, he says, "Okay, fine. I'll give you a call when the schedule gets put together." And the first year I did 9 games because I had another job working with the federal government back around 10 years ago. But after that job ended, it was 18 to 20 games a year for the most part. And then as the main voice of the women's team last 2 years, I've been doing 32, 4 games a year now.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Trish actually had a daughter who played for Quinnipiac University as well.
Carly Fabry was a point guard for 4 years, and she had the coach's DNA out there. I mean, she was the floor general. She was the point guard, and was a spark plug of the teams that, she was on that team that won the 2 games in Miami. Right. And then the following year, when they played at UConn, they beat Miami in the first game, lost to UConn by 25 in the second. That was her senior season. So she was responsible for 3 of their NCAA tournament victories.
Wow. Yeah, because I've listened to you call Quinnipiac games against whoever they were playing, and I've remembered that's a name that sticks out. And you're like, okay.
It was a funny thing. In her case, there was no other school, though. She was looking at Pennsylvania as a high school senior. She went to Laurelton Hall in Milford, and had a knee injury when she was in high school. So there was like 1 year she barely played at all while she recuperated from her knee injury. But the funny thing is that when she got to Quinnipiac, now you're dealing with mom to a certain point, but then mom becomes coach. It's a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And so some of the running jokes was there were some days that she got upset with the coach in practice. She went to her father to complain, Trish's husband, by the way.
Right.
And so you got that dynamic, and her husband is a baseball coach, I believe, at Bunnell High School in Stratford. So he's got a coaching background as well.
Oh, man. Well, Bob Mortali, we're about to run out of time today, but before we do, I want to thank you for coming down again, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
I'm glad you had me. We look forward to it, and I appreciate the time.
You got it. On behalf of Bob Mortali, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.